This will be even more fun than the Tonys, I'm sure. It's my pleasure today to introduce the 2016 Erwin Ephron Demystification Award. This award pays tribute to this remarkable fellow, Erwin Ephron. He was a gentleman, a scholar, a gadfly, a teacher, a guy with a very great grasp of the technical details, but with this uncanny ability to make very complicated ideas accessible to everyone. He made it seem almost like magic. The Erwin Ephron Demystification Award represents this industry's effort to encourage a continuation of that magic by calling attention to others who not only lead and innovate and think, but who also do an exemplary job of communicating their ideas with grace, with wit, and with clarity. The winner of this year's award is eminently worthy of the unique distinction that the Erwin Ephron Demystification Award confers. This is only the third time that we have made this award. As with last year, a call for nominations went out far and wide, and the judging committee had more than 25 submissions to consider, including entries from both sides of the Atlantic. Each submission had to provide evidence that his or her nominee did 9 different things: challenge conventional thinking, motivate forward conceptualizing, promote proactive debate and creative ideas, translate ideas into action, instill thoughtful understanding through clear articulation in public speaking and in writing, embracing analytics and/or technology that addresses the complexities of modern markets, inspire communication that speaks to CEOs and CFOs, encourages collegiality, and a new criterion that was added just for this year's award, moves the industry and leaves a legacy. These are all traits that Erwin embodied so brilliantly, any one of which would make for an exceptional professional credit. But to win this award, you had to stand out on all 9 of these criteria. And I'm happy to say that this year's winner surely does manifest all of these qualities and does honor to the standard that Erwin Ephron so ably set for us. Erwin had a way of cutting through the clutter to ask the most fundamental questions. And as an example of this, I quote directly from Erwin that will give you just a flavor of his style and approach. Erwin once wrote, "You want to fluster an agency president? Just ask him, how does advertising work? It's like asking locusts to stop eating and study philosophy. The usual focus is on how much, not how. But how is a very good question. Why should clients spend money if agencies don't have a sensible theory about how to spend it? And how can advertising people feel good about what we do if we have no conviction as to why we're doing it? Media is no exception. Unless a media plan has its feet planted in what we know about how advertising works, it can be inflated into a wish list for a bigger budget or a wind-up, a tired cobble of cliches: demo targeting, reach, impact, 3+ frequency, share of voice, media engagement, God and country." That's vintage Erwin Ephron, daring to say when the emperor has no clothes, but also willing to explain patiently how to bring order and intelligence to media planning. This year's winner is a different Erwin, spelled with an I rather than with an E. It's Erwin Gottlieb. Erwin Gottlieb is well known for the same kinds of Ephron-esque candor and clarity that Erwin Ephron was. Before we start the in-person tributes, some of Erwin's colleagues have shared their sentiments on video, so let's go to the film.
Erwin Ephron was a scholar and a gentleman.
Phenomenal.
Wit,
Eloquence.
ability to communicate,
Brilliance.
actionable,
Leadership.
pragmatic, intelligence,
Demystified.
Men with a giant intellect.
The winners of this award will truly be honored to be associated with Erwin and to be recognized for his unique qualities.
Erwin is wicked smart. He's the guy who brought technology to television.
Media is actually moving product.
He's made us all smarter.
Each element of the media plan has its role, and you need to know how much of it to allocate.
Just being in his presence makes you want to be better.
It was less about absolute accuracy and more about sufficient consistency
From a new media perspective, he probably knows more about new media ad technology than most CTOs do.
He always wants to learn. He always has to get that new toy.
The greatest leaders challenge researchers to translate their ideas into action and hold us to a high standard and raise the bar.
I'm a media guy. For us, 2016 is about really pushing the industry to do things.
Erwin, it's been a real privilege for me to have learned from you these past 10 years.
Is the first non-research person to actually get this award.
You're an icon, and congratulations on your award.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Erwin, and thank you so very much for all you've done for the industry.
My name is Artie Bolgren, and I can say that this is a pretty awesome honor to be here to help present this award to Mr. Gottlieb. As you heard from Scott, this award sets a pretty high bar, and I can tell you that, as he alluded to, this year's list of candidates was very, very impressive, a who's who of media, advertising, and research. But Erwin Gottlieb stood out on many levels for this award, particularly in areas, in my opinion, like challenging conventional thinking, embracing analytics and technology that address the complexities of our modern markets, and of course, someone who has moved the industry and will leave a legacy. In an Adweek article in 2008, he was called the king of advertising, and today he still oversees the largest media investment firm in the world. It's no accident. Appropriately, he was a friend of Erwin Ephron, as was mentioned, and applies that kind of demystifying thinking to his work, and he is remarkably savvy in the way that he has applied research to his business. Mr. Gottlieb has always been ahead of his time in advancing his craft in the industry. He taught himself to code when few even knew what that meant, and before anyone had the vision, he saw the value in the web not just for impressions, but for the data that it generated. His firm was behind the change in TV's currency from standard program ratings to C3 almost a decade ago. And yet, in 2012, when the idea of moving to specific commercial minute ratings was introduced by the ANA, Erwin, with his knowledge of research, stepped in with a voice of sensibility, arguing that the limitations of Nielsen's sample methodology at the time makes this unrealistic. In that same article, he said, "No measurement system will be absolutely accurate. The industry needs to get over the notion that exact measurements are worthwhile pursuits. There are too many greater and more realistic issues that need to be dealt with in the measurement space." Now, I never worked with Erwin Gottlieb directly. Obviously, he spends a lot of money with my company. It's one reason I'm up here today. But I certainly knew of him as a legendary figure. Then last year, I finally had the privilege of working with him by moderating an all-star panel at this conference right here in this stage, including him and the leaders of Nielsen, ComScore, and IRI. It was a conversation about the conflict between audience measurement and big data. I was clearly very nervous, but in the end, Erwin stole the show. His message resonated so significantly that Bill Harvey, our first Erwin Ephron Award winner, shared a transcript of that panel. Here is one excerpt I'd like to share that he shared that morning, which is indicative of why we are honoring him today. In this case, he was speaking to the power of big data. He said, "So if you start at the very, very top level, media is a critically important piece of the marketing equation. The traditional role of media, as I first learned it, was typically about addressing the top of the marketing funnel. That's kind of all we did, but today media has the capability to drive right through the entire marketing funnel, and that's powered and informed by granularity of data. And so it is that granularity of data that we get from our DMPs, from big data, from profiles that are either household or census level. But unfortunately, the most effective medium out there, and I don't think anyone challenges that, television, still relies on sample methodology, which makes it difficult when we try and conjoin data silos. It's just what Erwin Ephron said so articulately many years ago. It's about the media mix. Each element of a media plan has its role, and you need to know how much of it to allocate, and you can't do the analytics part if you don't have data at the same level of granularity across all the media, because the quality of your analysis falls to the worst common denominator, and that's kind of the state of the art today, and it's not very good. Certainly clear, articulate, and demystifying. So thank you, Erwin Gottlieb, for your wisdom and for pushing us forward. Personally, I would also like to pass on a personal statement from Ed Earhart, President, Global Sales and Marketing at ESPN, who said, having Erwin's sage counsel and unbiased point of view about media and the business of where advertising is going next has provided ESPN with much guidance over the years, so thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Dave Morgan of Simul Media with a few more words and the award.
Taking my time on my ride. Taking my time on my ride.
Good afternoon. I had the great honor of being one of the nominators of Erwin Gottlieb for this award, and I thought I'd just spend a couple minutes here and tell you why I think that we've chosen an extraordinary person for it. As already mentioned, and you heard from Scott, he's been a true innovator, inventor. He epitomized everything that was Erwin Ephron and his approach to the market. The things that I think that are really, really critical to understand, and I think are, for an award and someone who is focused on innovation, which sometimes is only incremental change, you very rarely get to honor someone and be a contemporary of someone who has brought true invention to an industry. And I think that I want to highlight a couple examples of things that are part of the core operating system of our business that I don't think people recognize how much Erwin Gottlieb represented in bringing those to us. Yes, he taught himself to code, but what you might not know is that he taught himself to code at some point, I think, in the 1972, 3, 4 era, when he was doing trafficking because they were all just initials to me since I wasn't in the business then, SSC and B. And the log books were handwritten, and he realized that using computers could change the business, and he brought computers into the advertising and media business. And then, in his time at Benton and Bowles, working on the Procter & Gamble account and recognizing that you could bring mathematics to the way that you planned media, he connected with a gentleman, Erwin Ephron, and actually got behind the work that we know as the recency work and focusing on the importance of reach and other things. It's a basic, also, operating system and application for how we operate today. And then in the 1990s, when we first had respondent-level data become available in the market, he realized that you actually could apply this to the same kind of software and you could gain competitive advantage in how you not just planned but bought media. And that led to his helping found MediaVest and StarVest and what was ultimately became part of WPP and Group M. And so it wasn't an accident, as already mentioned, his role in the C3 and C7. And so for someone who has been in the technology industry in my life, I always wish I'd had a chance to get to meet, know, work with a Steve Jobs or a Bill Gates or a Mark Zuckerberg, because they're people that invented their industry, and not just in how they did it, but they actually built and architected the industry. We're very fortunate that we have in our presence today the man who is the actual business architect of how $1/3 of $1 trillion media business operates everywhere in the globe today, every single component of it, and it was mathematically and research and empirical and data-driven. And that's something that just doesn't happen. And I want to end, before handing this over so we can hear from Erwin himself, to say that anybody knows, and anyone who has worked with him, is that he is, if anything, an extraordinary human being, and he's magnanimous. Whenever I've ever, and most of us have ever, needed some advice or counsel or just want to run something by, you can call him up, and you can go to his office, and you can sit down, and after being treated to tea, and you get to learn. And he has shared this, and it's not always been in his competitive interest to share these things, but he wants to grow. And in an industry where there's sometimes question of trust, he's someone who he's going to tell you the truth. He's going to treat you with trust, and you can trust him. And he remembers all the little things. And so I'm so honored just to be one of many people here, and that we can give the Erwin Ephron Demystification Award to Erwin Gottlieb. So please join us up here.
I'm rarely tall enough to hit this, so I'm mic'd separately. So it's his fault. Now I know. There will be retribution. Thank you, everyone. Obviously, I want to thank the nominating committee and the judges for even thinking of me, much less giving me the award. It's Erwin with an E, not with an I, but it's good enough, maybe even better. I'm really thrilled to be recognized by the ARF. I'm not a research guy, I never was. I tend to dig deeply into things. Some say I'm a bit OCD, which may explain a number of characteristics. But research to me has always represented the very foundation of the media practice. I tell people we don't do anything until we have the analytics and the insights, because without that you can't inform your strategy or your tactics or your execution. And keep it in that sequence. And it's the underpinning of everything that we do. And I know there are people in my organization who are sick and tired of it. A small group of us just had to reorder a bunch of charts because inadvertently they were put in the wrong order. And it's something that I've always done and I always insist on. Analytics and insights comes first. I'm also truly honored to be in the company. I mean, now there are three of us. It's Bill Harvey, David Poltrack. One couldn't ask for better company. Each of the two of them are in their own way the quintessential media research guys. So how could I do anything but be honored to be in that group? So we've talked about Erwin. I'm trying to think. He was I think somebody said, a wonderful gentleman. He was an intellect of the highest order. He really was. Probably the smartest guy I knew. We all come across these puzzles. We come across stuff that we have to solve for. And he was the guy. He was the guy that I went to when I needed to solve a problem. You could bounce anything off him, you'd get a simple answer. If you didn't get the answer, you knew full well that you could leave it with him and the answer would come back. There was nothing you could throw at this guy that would destabilize him. And as I said, you framed the question, you answered some of his questions, and you went away, and you knew that the solution was en route. He did exemplify the best aspects of this community. And it's a really interesting community because each of you know that the tasks that you face aren't easy. They're absolutely daunting, right? But if it was easy, who the hell would need you? Speaking of community, I also have to acknowledge that I've always been supported by some of the best media research people around. So, obviously, we've talked about Erwin, but I've had people like Bruce Gerlich over in the MediaVest days. I've had people like Lyle Schwartz the last 15 years. This business could not have evolved to where it is today to the complexity that we all deal with every day, to the granularity of data that I don't remember talking about it, but I guess I did, to the granularity of data that supports and informs everything that we do. We couldn't have gotten there without the people in this room. And so I'm up here picking up the Erwin Ephron Award, but it's all of you guys who made it all possible. I said this earlier. This one, I've gotten lots of awards. This is the most meaningful one yet. You know, I wrote this, I never thought I'd choke up. I didn't when I wrote it. It's a community that I have enormous respect for. It's named after a guy I thought the world of. Erwin with an E. I'm good, thanks. Erwin with an E is the award I'm picking up. Erwin with an I is truly grateful. Thank you.